Then are they tightly controlling what's on the internet? So if anything
They have,
would happen, it would be through Twitter.
well, of course, okay. In the 90s, everyone tried to control satellite TV by taxing it, by criminalizing it, and as Lisa was describing, the people got around it. They put it under blankets, they put it under tarps, they hid it under bushes, they would put it on a rolling tray so you could put it in. The state was defeated. Most Middle Eastern states, with the exception of Saddam Hussein's Iraq, under sanctions, again providing that stranglehold on the economy. So they tried to control satellite TV and they failed very early, and they just sort of gave in, and now and just gave up trying to fight it. Okay, same thing with the internet in the 2000s. Whether it's this Chinese model of trying to control and block certain keywords, trying to leverage your market share with Google to prevent them from facilitating certain kinds of searches, whether it's by putting a new branch of the state security services sitting there right at the neck of your ISP to monitor all the flow that comes in and out. They have tried all of those things, and they still do. One of the really, yeah.
Well, I kind of want to take you off on a different tangent.
Okay.
It's more like the level of misery or the level of oppression. Isn't this excessive, perhaps?
Perhaps. Yes, perhaps. The level of poverty is not as high. That's part of it. And there are
anticipation of consequences, so it's extremely high.
Indeed.
Because of incidents like
Yeah. Okay, just while we're on that topic, okay, clearly you have to look at the ratios of people that are really living in intolerable circumstances to people who are doing okay. And those people who are doing okay, are they disgruntled like they were in Egypt, or are they, one of the interesting statistics Mark showed was that 8% unemployment rate in Syria. If that's true, that's actually awesome. That's really good. Okay, and it's not just that poverty is a single linear cause. It seems to be a certain combination of intolerable poverty in some circumstances, with a middle class educated vanguard, having some kind of back and forth between them. That particular social constellation isn't quite right in Syria right now. There are other things. Again, I'm speaking to you here, I'm on TV. I'd rather have my students who don't have the high stakes that I have in Syria talk about some things, and therein lies a lesson for those of you who are going to Syria. You have to be really careful, because those same networks, and when we know each other better, I can tell you more stories about this. Those same kinship and friendship and Facebook and Twitter networks, if you've got a state that means business, they follow through on those. And I can talk big talk on my own behalf and take risks on my own behalf, but when I know that I am implicating a circle of friends and relatives and in-laws and children by doing that, that risk-reward calculation is very different. So those networks can be used against you if you think that the stakes are high enough, and if someone wants to fight you that. One last kind of constellation that's different, that Syrian intellectuals are pointing out now, that Syria, authoritarian as it is, has had a transition from a 3-decade father to a reforming son, who has instituted very limited reforms. If you look at the Vogue article from this morning about the First Lady of Syria, it just came out this morning, you'll see that there is a sort of a cosmopolitanism, a limited reform ethic in Syria personified by the First Lady, a investment banker from London, who's bought into this. That's slightly different. And the state is seen not as a lackey of the West. Okay? So in terms of legitimacy, you have a huge, massive infrastructure like Egypt, perceived as working only for American and Israeli interests. In Syria, they're still in war with Israel, and that interestingly provides a lot more legitimacy to the government, because it hasn't oriented the entire state infrastructure to an American and Israeli-oriented peace process. Okay, so those are some of the reasons why Syria is a little bit different, but I forgot what we were talking about before we... Yeah, yeah. Oh, if the state tries to control... Okay, here's what I'm trying to write about, even as we speak. In Egypt, for the last 10 years, there have been on again, off again attempts by a cosmopolitan, well-educated, underemployed, middle-class youth to shake things up using the blogosphere. Okay, so we've had several MA theses about the Egyptian blogosphere and nationalism, okay, say over the last 5 years. The government periodically cracks down on these people, okay, and shuts down their blogs and tosses the blogger in jail. Okay, so very heavy-handed tactics. It was going along like that for a while. Interestingly, within this minority community of people who are super internet literate, the isolated blogosphere, you didn't have you're a blogger, you have maybe a readership, of anywhere from a few hundred to a few thousand readers. It was still very easy to use those traditional police state methods of picking people off one by one. And there are some very famous cases of imprisoned Egyptian bloggers throughout the last decade. Within this limited internet world, Facebook really seems to have made a difference. Because again, going back to Facebook and its difference from Twitter, again, it's that much faster than someone starting, I know this because I tried to do a blog. It was a miserable failure. Blog is a very labor-intensive and socially isolated enterprise. Unless you're the one in a million that takes off, you're still easy to pick off. Okay? Facebook makes it very, very different because it's that much more compact, that much more networked, that much more frictionless, and that was even before Twitter. So they called this thing the Facebook revolution for a reason. The way Facebook was deployed was to start Facebook pages for these causes célèbres of, this or that blogger who was tossed into jail, or this or that otherwise innocent, tragic case of someone like Khalid Said, who was, beaten to death in an Egyptian jail. Okay, so you start up the Facebook page, people would like it, the state would crack down, and the initial call that got people out into the streets in Egypt was from a woman who had started a Facebook page, and the government cracked down, as you recall, shut down Facebook for the first weeks of the Egyptian revolution. And her call went out and said, we need to get off of Facebook. Facebook is eating up our time. We've all been twittering away these last 10 years, playing on Facebook, wasting our time doing these frivolous enterprises. It's time to get out in the streets. Okay? So the government shut down Facebook at exactly the wrong time, when enough people were mobilized and energized. And when Facebook shut down, people knew that the government was really scared. Okay? Same incident in Bahrain that I was describing to you recently. People are tweeting in from Bahrain, the internet service provider is slowing down service. I can't tweet. We're going so slow. I can't upload my tweets. That is like a meta message that the state is really scared when they try and control the ISP. That lets you know that you're making progress. And because you can't communicate electronically, suddenly everybody knows where the street is. They're all out in the street. So I'm writing this little paper called Alternating Currents because the Egyptian government did it exactly wrong. They turned off Facebook, and that was a major alarm signal that they were really scared. And then they rethought it nervously, and they turned Facebook back on after people had been out in the streets, and then they could remobilize back on Facebook. And so it was this sort of back and forth, this kind of arms race of trying to control, trying to express, trying to control, that kind of cascaded and helped build up this massive popular movement. So it certainly wasn't Facebook by itself, but it was, reaching a tipping point where enough people were out there, enough people were paying attention to these signals, using that as a medium to see how scared the government actually was, and then saying, hey, we didn't always have Facebook, there's other things we can do. And Asma Mahfouz on February 25th, she said, I'm going out there and I call all you educated young people like me to get off Facebook and stop sitting in your rooms and playing on Facebook and wasting time. Come out into the streets. I'm going to be out there on February 25th, and if I, as and she's wearing a headscarf, and she says, if I, as a girl, can go out there and stand up, and if you're worried about me, come out there and stand up with me. And that was the beginning of these protests that ended up with millions of people, men and women, going. This is her. Yeah, can you play it?
Sure.
Can you see the? Oh, you don't have the speakers on. This was the initial message that went out by Facebook, and you can read the, I'll read you the, she's saying, go ahead, you want to? 4 Egyptians have set themselves on fire, thinking maybe we can have a revolution like in Tunisia. Maybe we too can have freedom, justice, honor, and human dignity. This goes on for like a while, actually. Today, one of those 4 people has died. These are the people who self-immolated. And you see all these copycat self-immolations. People say, oh, he's killed himself for nothing. People have some shame. I posted that I, a girl, am going down. Okay. Actually, we don't need the sound. It's in Arabic. That I, a girl, am going down to Tahrir Square alone, and I'm going to hold up a banner. And nobody came out with me except maybe 3 guys and 3 armored cars of riot police. Tens of hired thugs and officers came to terrorize us, okay? And they shoved us roughly away from the people. But as soon as we were alone with them, they started to talk to us. And they said, enough, these guys who burned themselves are psychopaths. These are what the thugs are saying. Yeah, I can open it up. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, whoever dies in protest is a psychopath. And she says, well, if they were psychopaths, why did they burn themselves in front of the Parliament building? I'm making this video to give you one simple message. We're going to go down to Tahrir Square on January 25th. If we still have honor and want to live in dignity,
On this land.
yeah, we'll go down and demand our rights, our fundamental human rights. We won't even talk about political rights. We just want our human rights and nothing else. This entire government is corrupt.
A corrupt president and corrupt security force.
Yeah, and they were not afraid of death, but they were afraid of the security forces. Can you imagine that? Are you also like that? Are you going to kill yourselves too, or are you completely clueless? I'm going down, and from now until then, I'm going to distribute flyers.
In the student.
I will not set myself on fire. And if the security forces want to set me on fire, let them do it. If you think yourself a man, come with me on January 25th. Whoever says women shouldn't go on protests because they will get beaten, let him have some honor and manhood and come with me on January 25th. Whoever says it's not worth it because there will be only a handful of people, I will tell them you are the reason behind this. You are a traitor, just like the president or the security cops. Yeah. Your presence with us will make a difference, a big difference. Talk to your neighbors, and here she's saying talk. Talk to your neighbors, your colleagues, your friends, family, tell them to come. They don't have to come to Tahrir Square, just go anywhere and say it. We are free human beings. Sitting at home and just following us on the news or Facebook leads to our humiliation, leads to my own humiliation. If you have honor and dignity as a man, come. Come protect me and the other girls in the protest. If you stay home, then you deserve all that's being done to you, and you will be guilty before your nation and your people. Okay? So it's a complex discourse invoking gender norms, human rights, and this interesting interplay that uses Facebook to distribute this message, but at the same time says, if you're just sitting at home, you don't have to go to Tahrir Square, just go to any street and just protect any person. And that's what happened.